Good morning everyone, welcome back to Join the Dots. Sometimes in life something comes along that explains so much of what you can spend so long trying to explain. And today, now you may hear some banging in the background, you may hear some noisy children, but the message is the important thing, not the distraction. We live in a world of distractions. Don't be distracted. Okay, so I came across a piece yesterday by Lei, L-E-I, and Lei's Real Talk is one I've referred you to time and time again on China. We're going to talk China today because it's the most important thing happening for all our futures. And I'll get a couple of bots and I'll get a couple of silly comments because there are a lot of people following China and many of them don't want the truth. They don't want to hear the truth and they can't accept the truth because when your country collapses, it's very sad, and I understand that. I really understand it. So Lei's Real Talk yesterday was on From Fake Jobs to Human Feed, China's Economic Meltdown. Now, this links, and remember what we're doing here, we're joining the dots, we're linking the truths to come to a better decision-making process. So what does this piece do? Well, it starts off talking about pay cuts. Pay cuts are occurring across China. Indeed, they have actually formed an office to cut pay. It's an official office, an office to cut pay. And of course this feeds down through the local government vehicles who have to pay the teachers, the doctors, the police, etc. So local government salaries are being cut by 30 to 50%. 30 to 50% cuts in local government salaries. Police, teachers, doctors, hospital staff, etc. So tell me, what does that do to consumption? 38% of China's economy, 38% last year. What does it do to consumption when your middle class effectively take 30 to 50% pay cuts? When the mortgage is probably 30 to 40% of their salary. It's not rocket science here. It's not rocket science. It's public. An office to cut pay. It's public. Okay? So what happens to consumption? Well, it falls, doesn't it? And what happens to property prices when people don't have any money, so they can't even think about moving home? In fact, they're struggling to pay their mortgage. Because if their mortgage is, in a typical world, in a typical country, the mortgage payment is around 30% of your take-home pay. They can't pay it. And they're having 30 to 50% pay cuts. Please understand the consequences. Join the dots. Join the dots from the truth. The truth is they're having 30 to 50% pay cuts. Join the dots. What is the effect on overall consumption? What is the effect on property prices given that people can't afford to move up and probably have to choose to move down into a market where no one's buying? What happens? So we link there, we link property prices and we link consumption. Remember, property was 30% of the economy before this slowdown. Consumption, 38%. There's 2/3 of the economy in serious recession, almost depression. Almost depression. And what's the other part of the economy? Exports. And what's happening there? Well, they're suffering, aren't they? Because every country suddenly has woken up to the fact that China has been dumping for years. Dumping cheap EVs, dumping cheap solar panels, dumping. Companies have been incentivized to produce cheap goods, many times financially incentivized, such that they are not competing fairly under the terms of the WTO with all the other countries they export to. And what are we seeing? We're seeing a reaction. We're seeing countries, India, Brazil, even two of the countries within the BRICS, India and Brazil, saying no more. We want tariffs on it, or we want anti-dumping rules, or we want this, or we want that. So 30% of your economy is property and construction development, gone. 38% is consumption, hard hit. And the balance is exports. Ouch. Can you see it? Can I join the dots anymore for you? Okay. So we've got this. Lei goes on to explain that they've now got fake offices. Now I understand this because the culture in China is one of face. It's one of not wanting to lose face, especially for a husband or especially for the male in the family, because it's a very traditional setup, and the male in the family does not wish to lose face. So now we have lots of Chinese men going to fake offices, actually paying to go to an office and pretend they're working. And this is a growing business, evidently. This is a business that's growing in providing fake offices so that people don't have to accept the truth or show the truth to their family. Now, okay, let's think. What's the next link then? Well, if they're going to these offices and they're paying to work there or not work there, and they're paying for food while they're there, how are they doing that when they haven't got a salary? Well, they're borrowing on credit cards. Here's another link. So now we link through to the banking crisis. So now we've got corporates, the whole construction development industry in chaos. Evergrande, Country Garden, Sunac, Shimao, Logan, Greenland, Vanke, you name it, they're bust. Okay? So what's happening to the tax-paying part of the economy when there's very few jobs, and what jobs there are fake? Well, they ain't paying tax, are they? So tax rates in China are, not tax rates, tax revenues in China are falling, and they're going to fall off a cliff, okay? But they're taking credit card debt. So what are the banks, how are the banks going to recover this money from these people who don't have a job, are paying to go to a fake office? How are they going to repay their credit card? They can't. You see, the dots are easy to join, but you won't find anyone joining them in the media. You won't find anyone joining them on Bloomberg, on Reuters, on CNBC, on Fox Business, on any of these services, meant to be services to you. They won't join the dots. That's my job. That's how I see it. Join the dots so that you can hear the news, but then understand what that news means. Okay, so we have less jobs. We have 50% pay cuts. We have less tax revenue. Hold on, local governments. Oh, we have protests now. We have 24 protests in the last 4 days, which is a record. Why do we have protests? Because they're not paying wages. Well, hold on, who's not paying wages? Well, companies are not paying wages, and also local governments are now not paying wages. Hold on, you say, what would happen if the council in England or the state in America didn't pay its wages? Well, you'd have protests. We've got protests. But what's happening? As the economy sinks, okay, and as the local systems fail, what have we got? We've got a suppression of free speech, which we know anyway. We know China is not communist. It should be the FCP. It should be the fascist Chinese party. Fascism equals total control with no other opinion allowed. If that doesn't define the CCP, I don't know what does. Fascism. You're being deceived everywhere by names and by distractions, like this noise I can hear in the background. It's a distraction. So what? Carry on. Let's join the dots, okay? So we have crumbling local governments who can't pay. Well, we know they can't pay wages because they've got 17 trillion of debt. From spending huge amounts of money on roads to nowhere, railways that go this fast, or trains that go this fast. Oh, it looks fantastic. Oh, it looks wonderful. I've got a client who's out in China quite regularly, and he says, it's wonderful, Mike. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. No, I'm not wrong. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. Japan did the same in the 90s or 80s and paid for it through the 90s and noughties and 10s. But Japan was on its own. Okay, and the rest of the world was growing because of China, ironically. Now we see the whole world going into recession, and we see growth slowing massively, quickly, and we see spending not being able to be made. Join the dots. Joining them in China is very easy from this one presentation by the wonderful Lei. Right, she's a great person. Watch her presentation, please. The link is down below in the description. Okay, so we see consumption cut, property prices, there's no support. We see a banking crisis because people are spending money they haven't got on credit cards which they can't repay. And the banking crisis is already 47 trillion because of the local governments, or including the local governments, which have 17 trillion and have no way of repaying it. And now they're not paying their staff. They're not paying wages. Can you please see this? I hope you can, because it is so, so important. Remember, this is a $47 trillion tsunami. This is 15 times subprime of 2008-9, and what did that do to the Western world and its banking systems? And then we come back to yesterday's talk about what we're going to see. What financial systems are going to have to be used to replace the ones that are failing? We're going to need new financial systems, both in the East and in the West. Okay? Hopefully, this news, just watching that one piece from Lei, it's about 15 minutes, will help you to join the dots as I have. And then from there, we join the dots and we talk about what new financial system is going to have to be put in place, both in the East and the West. Okay, thank you for watching. Any comments, any questions you want to ask me, put them in the comments down below. Okay, I will answer them. I answered a few the other day because they were simply not sensible. And so I asked people, if you're going to make a comment, quote the data you're talking about, and then I'll discuss it with you. And I will, openly, I'll discuss it with you. Okay? We're here in this together. We're joining the dots to a safer place. Thank you very much.